I am in pursuit of growing a lotus flower from seed here in the Netherlands. Now, this has been an ongoing experiment and a challenge really that has been going on for well over a year now. I've started in June of last year, so that's 2025. And ever since I started this whole process, I've documented basically every step along the way. So that is germinating the seeds, transplanting the seedlings into a grow tub, as well as overwintering the entire plant. I've put all of those videos in a series that you can watch on my channel. I'll put a link in the description below. Most of them are YouTube shorts. Some of them are long form videos, such as the one you are watching right now. And I thought it would be a great time to make a general update video and an overview of how things are going right now that we are well into season 2. Now, before we get into the actual update of the current Lotus situation, there's two things I want to quickly go over. First, a very brief overview of what has happened so far ever since I started this whole experiment. Now, that is of course where the entire YouTube series is for. So if you want to watch that on your own terms and tempo, you can skip this part. Second, I quickly want to go over the several stages that a lotus goes through in order to reach full maturity. Alright, so the quick update of what has happened so far. Last year, I germinated a couple of seeds and I transplanted the seedlings into 3 different tubs. One was back at home and 2 were installed here in the garden, of which one is outside in the garden, or was outside in the garden, and one was installed here in the greenhouse. It's the one right next to me. All 3 of them did fairly well, with this one doing exceptionally well. However, this was also the only one that survived the winter. Now, I made an entire video about that as well. It's in the series, you can watch it over there. This year started off fairly slowly. We had some really mild temperatures up until the beginning of May. After that, however, the temperatures really skyrocketed and this lotus plant really started to wake up within a month's time. And in the month after that, it completely covered the entire surface of this tub. And now we are actually at the point that it's starting to send out multiple aerial leaves. Speaking about aerial leaves, let's quickly go over the 3 different phases that a lotus goes through. Now, a lotus is a perennial plant, which means it grows over multiple years. However, that also means that if you grow it from a seed or seedling, it needs those first couple of years to really get established and reach full maturity. So if you germinate a seed and you transplant that seedling into the mud, the lotus will really focus that first season on establishing a strong root system, as well as gathering more energy through the nutrients in the soil, but also photosynthesis by sending out more leaves. Now, in my case, and I think in most cases, that happens in a single season. At the end of the season, the lotus will go into dormancy. Now, that dormancy period really depends on where you live. It can be a couple of months if you live in a very warm climate, but in my case, that dormancy period was pretty much the entire winter and the beginning of spring. However, if the following season starts, then the lotus plant, of course, has a head start compared to last year because it already has an established root system. So it can focus more energy in creating leaves and gathering even more energy through photosynthesis. Now, once it has gathered enough energy, it will transition into phase 2 and it will start sending out these aerial leaves. Now, aerial leaves, as the name suggests, stand above the water surface, sometimes a couple of centimeters, sometimes even a meter. It also really depends on the type of lotus that you have, as well as the amount of room it has to grow in. Now, as far as I can tell, aerial leaves are there to gather even more energy because they are often tilted at a different angle, but we'll get to that a little bit later in the video. And once it has sent out a lot of these aerial leaves and gathered even more energy throughout the nutrients in the soil, as well as photosynthesis, it will finally transition into phase 3, which means it has enough energy to start producing reproductive parts. And in the case of plants, those are of course flowers. Now, just for clarification, well-established and fully mature plants will go through each of these phases every year. So they will grow roots, they will produce surface leaves, aerial leaves, and produce flowers. It's just that young plants that are still developing will probably not reach the latter stages in a single season. All right, let's finally get into the current situation of the lotus bowl here right next to me. With camera in hand, let's get a little bit closer. Now, before I say anything, originally I planted 2 seedlings in this tub, and it's impossible for me to say if both of them have survived the winter or only one of them. I'm thinking both of them have survived and they are now getting a little bit entangled into each other, but that's not really a problem. And if it is, it's for a later day. But let's have a good look. So what do we see over here? We see surface leaves, we see aerial leaves, and we see some new growth tips coming up. One over here, for example, that one is already unfurling, and there's even a new one right over there next to the thermometer. So first off, the color of all the leaves is looking very good and healthy, even though you can see a couple of brown and yellow spots. Now that is not something really to worry about. Sometimes a leaf just simply gets old and it starts to wither away. You can cut those off or just let them be. This particular part over here, I accidentally dropped a piece of wood in there and it damaged the leaf. So that piece over here is slowly dying off as well. However, the Lotus really knows where to find some additional light and energy, so it's already trying to send out a new leaf right over there. You can see that the first aerial leaves kind of concentrated at the back end over here, but especially with that one and this one coming up on the other side, it means that the entire root system is getting really active throughout the entire tub. You'll also notice that most of these aerial leaves come up at the very edge of the tub, and that is because the root system of a lotus grows like a chain, and once it hits the side it will start to bend and go round and round and round and round, which is why most of the new leaves will start sprouting from the side. But that doesn't mean that an offshoot can go right across and that an aerial leaf can pop up right from the middle, but for now it's mostly at the edge. All right, let's have a closer look to the actual aerial leaves right now. Again, the color is really beautiful, really healthy. There are some small spots of damage, but nothing to worry about. This one over here is by far the biggest one. It's actually kind of blocking the view. I have a tape measure over here and it is about, you can't really see it right now, 18 centimeters. So this is not the biggest that you can get, but it's definitely a sign of good health for the plant so far. Now, you'll also notice that most of these leaves have kind of flopped to one side and they are facing this side over here, so right over here, and that might have to do with the fact that they're kind of top heavy. They continue to grow once they have fully unfurled, but I'm also thinking that this has to do with something called phototropism, which basically means that leaves turn towards the sunlight. Now, they are right now facing the south, and since I'm in the Netherlands, it also means that the sun is traveling through the southern sky. Yeah, so that makes a lot of sense, and that the plant really wants to get as much sunlight and as much photosynthesis as possible. So given the fact that this is the second season, I think things are looking very well. At the end of last season, I had a single aerial leaf popping up, which was already, I thought, a big achievement. And now every few days or so, new aerial leaves are popping up everywhere. And this is just looking like a very healthy and well-established lotus plant. Whew, all right, getting myself out of that boiling greenhouse for a second. So what are my closing thoughts for the future? Will I be able to grow a lotus flower from seed? In theory, yes, I think I will be able to grow a flower. One of the challenges, of course, lies in the fact that I'm doing this in the Netherlands. Now, normally the Netherlands is deemed to be or to have a relatively mild climate. This is hardiness zone 8B. And the lotus, of course, being a subtropical plant. However, if you're watching this in 2026 or you remember the summer of 2026, especially if you're European, then I don't have to tell you that this has been a very hot and dry summer so far. In the case of the lotus, that actually might be a very good thing because it might actually help to boost its growth and whatnot. Now we are at the beginning of August, so I expect we still have at least 4 to 6 warm and sunny weeks ahead of us. So if the plant decides to grow a flower, then I expect that to happen in the coming 6 to maybe 8 weeks. But we'll see, fingers crossed, of course. If not, then, well, the plant will go into dormancy and it will have a very strong root network with a lot of energy reserves to hopefully explode in the next year, but we'll see about that. Now, this experiment has also been a journey of research and learning. Several sources actually say that it is very hard, if not impossible, to grow a lotus flower from seed, which is the reason why most people actually grow lotus plants from rhizomes. So rhizomes are the thick lotus tubers, the root part that stores the energy, and they are already well established and fully matured, and they will guarantee you to get an exact copy of the mother plant. That is not the case with lotus seeds, because in order to get successfully pollinated lotus seeds, you need 2 parent plants. And unless pollination happens within an isolated area with exactly the same plants, you're going to get genetic alterations of the 2 different mother plants, or mother and father plants. Speaking of variations, I am growing the Nelumbo nucifera alba. Alba meaning white, so I'm growing a white variation of the classic sacred lotus. Now, in terms of research and learning, I stumbled upon this book over here called Lotus in Bloom. It is written by Shi Lian Yao, and I'm absolutely sorry if I butchered that name. He's also known as Dr. Lotus, and he has been growing lotuses for well over 10 years. And this has been an extremely handy and practical guide. It contains a lot of pictures how to grow lotuses both from seed as well as from tuber. It tells you, for example, what kind of soil you can use or what kind of containers you should use. So if you want to take a shot at growing lotuses yourself, I highly recommend this book. So with all of that said, I am still very much determined to grow a lotus flower from seed here in the Netherlands, even though some sources say it's very difficult to do. Now, this has been a tremendous journey. I have learned a lot. It has been very rewarding, sometimes even a little bit anxiety inducing. But give me a follow if you are interested in this lotus project in particular. And if you're interested in what has happened before all of this up until this point, then you can watch the series that I've created. I'll put a link in the description below. With that said, I want to thank you for watching this video. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.